You came over, walked over, and picked up both of them. And we're just like, what's up, boys? And they're going, what the heck? And I'm like, I don't think that's happening in New England. Belichick's like, get these kids out of here. My next guest on Soup with Coop is one of the great defensive minds, but more importantly, one of my favorite people in the whole world. I can't believe he agreed to be on this show. Welcome, John Fox, to Soup with Coop. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Coop. How about yourself?
I'm great. I'm excited to share a little soup with you today. What kind of soup are you having?
Well, I got my favorite soup on the planet. It's New England clam chowder, and it's from my nicest little go-to place down here in Marco Island called Island Gypsy.
Ooh.
And it's delicious.
I look forward to coming down and saying hello one time and take me over there.
You're invited anytime.
Well, I'm having a little New England clam chowder myself. It's delish. Well,
I have to get my napkin out, Coop.
Oh, it's okay.
I'm a little messy. I think that's the defensive roots in me.
This show is a little messy, so feel free to spill all over yourself and say whatever you want. Coach, one of the first things when you look up your bio and stuff, one of the things that you kind of weed through, and is your stepdad was a Navy SEAL.
Yep.
What was that like growing up with a Navy SEAL in your family?
Well, I'll tell you what, I can remember him sitting in my garage, packing his war bag and taking M16 magazines and taping them back to back so that when they were, on mission, they could click it out and then just turn it around and flip it back up. So basically they had 2 magazines of rounds. We also had one of their war dogs stay with us, Susie. That was a big German Shepherd, and at that time she only knew German commands, because they didn't want the kids in the family to attack. So, anyways, he lived with us, and then one day I went out to the base with him. He and Brumiller were training the dog, and I was like, that dog lives with us. She's about to tear Mr. Brumiller's arm off.
Did you ever want to get in the military and follow suit, or did you always just have a little more of a athletics,
well, I think that was in the 60s when I was probably about 11 years old, but that's about when I got into football. When I was 11, that was my first year of competitive football or organized football. But then what followed that when I became a teenager was the 70s, and it was in that era it was pretty anti-military. At that time he opened up Bud's training out there in Coronado. So we left Little Creek, Virginia and Virginia Beach and moved out to San Diego. So the little bit older I got, Coop, I kind of, it wasn't real popular to be in the military at that time. The Vietnam War was getting pretty trashed. But I have a greater appreciation, for what he did and what they do and, the military in general today than I did back in the 60s and 70s.
It's funny. A couple things get me choked up in the world. And it's a lot of times it's like father-son relationships and, people doing things that they didn't think they could do. But also when you see those, and ESPN does a good job of when they do those clips when someone's coming home and all of a sudden they're doing something, they look over and it's just a dart to go and just hug. And I get choked up every time.
Well, there's a lot of similarities. I can remember as a kid, my dad would do 6-month tours and, all his teammates were, in the neighborhood, a little bit like football. And the guys would go off and do their thing and, the moms and the kids all hung out. We did things together because the dads were gone for 6 months. And, there's a lot of correlations to that in football season. I'm not trying to say it's the same, because that's the ultimate, but there are some correlations between, in my opinion, sport and the military.
With Caesars Sportsbook and Casino, every bet earns with Caesars Rewards. That means whether you win or lose, you're always earning towards perks like free stays at iconic Caesars properties, game tickets, dining, and more. And if you haven't started yet, here's a reminder. Your first bet is on Caesars, up to $1,250. Download the app with promo code OMAHAFULL and place your first bet. If you win, congrats. If you don't, you'll get it back as a free bet.
Before we even get into your career, one of my favorite memories of all time, you're coaching the Broncos in Denver, Peyton's there, and I bring my boys up, I bring the whole family up to a game, and kind of, I bring Arch and Hyde into the locker room. Yeah. And they're kind of looking around, and there's Von Miller, and there's Wes Welker, and they're just kind of and Peyton's in the shower, kind of waiting for him, and you had some people in town, and you came over, walked over, and picked up both of them, and we're just like, "What's up, boys?" And they're going, "What the heck?" And I'm like, what other locker room in the whole NFL does the head coach come over there and just grab these, 8 and 10-year-olds and just swing them around like they're his own? And I'm like, I don't think that's happening in New England. Belichick's like, get these kids out of here. So it's the most, and they're like, they've loved Coach Fox ever since. So
I appreciate that, Coop. It was, we always encouraged. I mean, I was lucky to be around some great coaches, and even when I was an assistant, and when I was with Chuck Noll at the Pittsburgh Steelers, Saturday's practice was family day, and all the kids came to practice, and I just always try to carry that. That's a valuable lesson I learned, and how important family is, and you try to breed that within your football team.
I have fond memories of going to those practices with my dad on Saturday. I thought Chuck Muncie and Wes Chandler were my best friends growing up, and they were just because it was a fun day at Saturday. Chuck Noll is kind of as great of a coach as he was, 4 Super Bowls, unbelievable amount of talent and Hall of Famers he coached. He's still kind of a mysterious man all these years, quiet, understated. What was it like being under him?
Well, he was, I think probably the biggest lesson I learned from him was he was just so even keeled, Coop. It was, I think our first 2 games, we lost by a combined score of like 90-7, against the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals, who really weren't that good. So I didn't say much about us, but, we went on to win the division and make the playoffs, and really lost to Denver out there in the divisional round, to go to the championship game. But he never wavered. He was always just Mr. Steady, never too high with wins, never too low with losses. The other thing that I learned from Chuck was, it was never about him. He wasn't demonstrative on the sideline, very even keeled. He wasn't doing commercials. He'd won 4 Super Bowls. He was kind of the greatest thing there was at that phase of the NFL. He didn't do commercials. It was never about him. It was always about the players. And, I always really appreciated that.
Well, I think you followed suit. You were, I would say whatever you want about you. You were definitely a player's coach. Players love to play for you. And that always shined just because when you ask someone, say, it was Coach Fox? Oh, Foxy. I talked to him 2 days ago. They lighten up. It's such a great way to be. And you have such a profound effect on these young men. I think they love you, and they do anything for you, and they play hard for you.
Well, that's, I think that's an edge I think that's important. They feel involved. I'm talking about players. They feel like, they have say. My experience is whenever you let people feel like, they have ownership, they'll do that much more for you, whether it's in the business world or the athletic world or even in your own family.
Did you know, I know you were a great athlete and loved to compete, but did you always in the back of your mind say, I think I might want to get into coaching one day?
Well, you know what, Coop? It's really amazing. My high school friends and college friends and just, lifelong friends. Back to what I was telling you, when I was 11, I played my first year of organized football. I had a great coach, had a great team, and I fell in love with the game. And even at 11, I was going to play football as long as I could, and then I was going to coach. And I never changed majors. I never changed focus. I never deviated from that plan.
When you look in the NFL today, you being a defensive-minded guy, and Is it harder to coach defense now than it's ever been?
Well, no question, because I think the rules, I was talking to Steve Young, a couple of years back when I was working with ESPN, and, just talking about playing quarterback. I mean, not that it's easy now, but it was way tougher then, as far as, the middle of the field wasn't open like it is now. I mean, guys were getting blown up, and you get a receiver blown up back in those days, and the receiver be looking at you as a quarterback, like, what are you trying to do? Now you get a flag, automatic first down. Somebody on defense probably gets ejected. The game, in the same way with, on defense back in those days, it was like, you try to crush the quarterback. It was like, and you can blame the offensive coordinator. Well, quit calling passes and we won't kill your quarterback. That was the mindset back then. And so those quarterbacks, I mean, they got rattled around pretty good.
Yeah.
But, the rules have changed. I think all for the good. I think safety of players and taking care of the players, I think is all good. But it definitely has opened up offensive football. Whether it's the penalties or the rules of the game, they're encouraging scoring. So it makes it that much harder on defense.
Looking back at some of the great players you've coached on the defensive side, who stands out as some of the guys you just loved to coach? I'm not saying they're the best player of all time, but just you loved having him in your locker room and loved that he was on your side of the ball.
Well, I just was talking to James earlier before we came on, and like he brought up that Rod Woodson was just on. And Rod played for me in Pittsburgh, and that was my NFL debut as a secondary coach, was with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Rod was a second-year guy. He'd obviously had a great rookie season, but, he was the epitome. When I draw up a defensive back, a cornerback, I mean, that's what they should look like and be like. I watched him single-handedly in the Houston Astrodome, believe it or not. That was where we were playing in the wild card round, and he single-handedly won the game. I mean, he came up at corner, stripped the football, recovered the ball, and then Gary Anderson was able to kick a walk-off, game-winning field goal in that game. And I mean, I just never saw a player, whether it was a punt return, a kick return, or just a run play that turned into a turnover, not just a passing game. I go back to Michael Strahan. I just got to see him in the Bahamas about a month ago. And it's great to see what he's done. I mean, now he's a movie star, basically. I mean, there's a lot of people don't even know he played football. Most of this.
That's amazing. That's pretty impressive when they don't remember him as a football player. They know him he's a busy man.
No doubt. Which, I mean, look, he's a great person. He's a great player, and there's no mystery why he's been so successful. He's just got tremendous focus and determination, and he's really good at what he does. He's a great person. Julius Peppers.
Yeah. No one is physically gifted as Julius. Would you say?
No,
I mean,
he walked in from day one, Coop, and you knew he was going to be the starter. We had a kid on the other side named Mike Rucker, who, again, just a great person, great player. And he says, Foxy, you got to start him right now. I mean, don't even mess with veteran stuff. He goes, he's the guy. And sure enough, he started from day one. And, what a great player. On offense, Steve Smith, what a competitive, great guy. Your brother, what a pleasure it was to be with him, what he brought to the table. And, it's just, you don't get a chance to do, be 16 years as a head coach and 32 years as an assistant without having great players. And, I tell people all the time, it's not about plays, it's about players and who's executing those plays.
And then on the opposite side, scheming for other players you played against. I mean, I always like to kind of get a sense of, Peyton talks about, going against Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. Just, that week of preparation was just brutal. By the time a game was over, you were just spent. Who gave you fits at night, knowing they were coming to town on Sunday?
Well, I think I go back, a lot of times for me, it was backs, and it was backs that not only were great runners, but, they were equally as threatening as a receiver. I go back to Marshall Faulk, from
So good.
the St. Louis days, and just how much time we had to spend, because not one guy could cover him. I mean, even if you dropped the safety out of the, brought down the safety, that wasn't going to be enough. You always had to have something to shove him to as a helper, and that takes a lot of work on defense to, based on where he lines up, what side, he's lined up formationally to, and how to get that help. But he was a guy that, it took a lot of work, to get that done. And still with all the other weapons, that was just an added problem, and, for some reason we got to see them a lot, which was not good, because we were a good football team, and you'd have to get through them, to get to that Super Bowl.
Like, what team you pull for? You just pull for the guys that you coached, and that how it works? Every Sunday you're going, okay, well, shoot, I got 3 old guys, playing for this team and 2 for this. How do you just pulling for individuals?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, Coop. There's people, this game is about relationships. I mean, I wouldn't know you like I know you if it wouldn't have been for Peyton, and so, your whole family I grew close to. But it's about relationships. And, I got a guy, Brandon Staley. I mean, I hired him in 2017 to be my linebacker coach, from a little school out of Ohio. And now he's the head damn coach for the Los Angeles Chargers. So, to watch his rise, and, he's got a bunch of my guys that are on his staff, that coached for me. So it's hard not to pull for guys like that.
I've always been kind of intrigued by just the fraternity of coaches. I mean, you can compete against guys, twice a year and prepare and hate them and, go at them. But at the same time, that coaching fraternity is pretty close, and you don't find a whole lot of coaches saying bad things about another coach, because you never know it. You might be looking for a job around the corner and need a friend. So I always thought that was kind of an interesting, to be that competitive yet be so fraternal.
Well, I think, Coop, like a lot of people don't realize, again, there's a lot of great professions out there, and I've gotten to be around, a lot of great people in different fields. But in the NFL, you got to remember, I used to tell people this all the time. I mean, there's only 31 people that do what I do. All right. And that was whether I was a DB coach, a defensive coordinator, or a head coach. It didn't matter. You can be the equipment man. And, you take a lot of pride in that job, and it's a hard job and a demanding job, but there's only 31 other equipment men, in the world. So it's just number wise, whether you're a player or a quarterback or a middle linebacker or equipment man. I mean, there's not that many people that are employed and do that job.
What's the worst part about being a head coach? When I watch like Hard Knocks, and they have those, they show the scenes when guys are going in to get cut. That seems like that would be a tough one. What's the hardest part?
I think it's everything but the football. I turned on, my wife and I were eating dinner last night, one of our favorite places down here in Florida. And obviously the TV's muted, but I'm looking at it and I'm watching Matt Rule have to explain how he cut a guy, a defensive back that hit a guy. It was, you'd call it a cheap shot. I don't think anybody does it on purpose. All right, but I don't know that I've ever seen that where, he has to fire the guy on the spot, for playing football. Yeah. And those types of things. I mean, Matt Rule didn't want to have to deal with that, but Matt Rule had to deal with that. And it's just some of those things, some of the non-football things, I watched, Zimmer at the Vikings had to cut a guy that was, indicted on a felony. Yeah. Those kind of things, I mean, they happen in the NFL. Well, nobody wants that stuff to happen and wants to deal with it. But so I'd say, Coop, really for me, it was everything other than football, the day-to-day operation of football.
And then when you get away from the game, what do you miss the most? I mean, obviously the competition and the winning and losing, but what else do you really miss?
I just miss, no doubt, I miss game day. I miss the excitement. I miss, everybody. That's the easy part. But I think even more so than that, the day-to-day relationship, whether it be with, your favorite offensive guy, or, whether it be, the training staff, busting on guys in the training room, just the hodgepodge relationship of being with the players and the staff every day, and that unity and that bond that you build. You don't replace that doing something else.
As always, Coach, we have one last bite of cold soup, and we give it a grade from 1 to 1,000. How'd you do today?
All right, this is Mama's special recipe. I'm going to say I got 1,000 on that. I'm batting 1,000 on my soup, Coop.
Perfect score for a perfect guy. Coach, can't thank you enough for joining us. Really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you soon.